In your business, do you feel like you're not making enough money? Do you feel like as you grow your company, things aren't getting better, that there's never enough money left over? I'm going to show you in this video exactly why that's happening. I'm going to show you why the business doesn't feel like it's ever improving. I'm going to show you why, in many cases, when you feel like you're underpricing, why that is. So in thinking about some of the common questions that we hear, what we hear from guys are, they feel like maybe they're not pricing their work correctly. They feel like they're not making enough money. They feel like the business never gets better. There's never any money left over, no matter how hard they work or how much they grow. And they also feel like they're just always scraping by. And they started the business from nothing and it felt pretty good at first. And then as it gets bigger and bigger, things just don't feel like they're getting better. They don't feel like they're ever escaping the trap of growth. They're never getting ahead. And I'm going to show you some numbers. Now, if you get caught up in the numbers that I'm demonstrating, you're going to completely miss my point because I have not put the thought into this to come up with real numbers. My goal is to show you why this happens and how to escape it. Don't be caught up on the numbers. They're only to get you thinking and to illustrate my point. So let me give you a use case that may not be exactly yours, but I think it'll set up my explanation of why the business doesn't feel like it ever really improves. So let's say when you first started out, you were working for somebody else in the industry, maybe not even in the industry, but you were working for someone else, and you were working 40 hours a week. You were making $14 an hour. That means you were taking home about $560 a week. We're ignoring taxes and all of that. Let's say you were in this industry and the company you're working for, there was some seasonality in it, and so you worked this job and maybe another. Again, just keeping this simple. So you worked 40 weeks of the year. So you were making $22,400 per year. So then you say, you know what? I know how to do this work. I can go start my own company. I've done it. I have all the experience. I could do this myself and I could make a lot more money. So you go out and you start a company, and let's say you overnight you sell 40 hours a week worth of work. So overnight you are now doing the exact amount of work that you were doing for your prior employer. You're working 40 hours a week. But now you're selling your work at $30 a man hour. So whether you're mowing yards or doing irrigation or installation, it doesn't matter what you're doing. You're selling that time on average for $30 a man hour. So if you're mowing yards, if you price the yard at $30 to mow the yard, that means it takes you about an hour. So now you're making on average $30 a man hour. You're selling 40 hours a week, so you're making $1,200 a week. You're doing way better than you used to do when you had your job. Now you're still working 40 weeks a year, but you're making $48,000 a year instead of $22,400. So things feel good. You're like, this is great. If I could just grow this business more, I could make a whole lot more money. So if I were to go get more jobs, hire more employees, think of all the money that I would make. So you think growth is going to fix your problem and it's going to let you have this really great lifestyle and you're just going to make tons of money. You run the numbers, you think, man, like I said, if I add people, I'm going to make a lot more money. This is where you really can't get stuck on my numbers. So now you're selling time at $30 an hour. Okay, that's how much you were selling your time for. But now you get a helper, and you're still selling time at $30 an hour. So if two of you are doing a job together, and you sell that job for $30, that means you can only be on that property for 30 minutes because your 30 minutes plus his 30 minutes equals 1 man hour. That's $30. You're making $30 a man hour. So if both of you work an hour on the job site, you better billed $60 to make $30 a man hour. So now you're selling your helper's time at $30 a man hour. And you think, oh, I could hire a guy for $40 or $14 an hour. I could sell it for $30 an hour. Think of all the money I'll make. But there's all these costs. So on your first guy, let's say you pay him $14 an hour. Please don't get stuck on my numbers. Let's say when you think about how many hours a week you work and you take the cost of your truck and the cost of gas and the cost of equipment and you just divide those costs out by the number of hours you work a week to arrive at an hourly cost to run the truck, hourly cost of gas, hourly cost of equipment. I'm going to say it for the fourth time. These numbers are not exact. They're solely to make a point. When you run the numbers, you figured out that it costs you about $2 an hour to run your truck. These are working hours, $1 an hour for gas and so on. And so once you add up all of your expenses, if you look down here at the bottom of my screen, it's costing you $21.67 to essentially employ this guy. So this guy's now got a truck, he's got gas expense, he's got equipment expense, he's got supplies, there's insurance on his truck, he's got some material cost, you've got to pay his workers' comp, my storage unit. There's so many other costs I didn't even account for here, but he's got to put his equipment somewhere. So on an hourly basis, if you were to look at all those costs, he's costing you about $21.67, which is quite a bit more than the $14. And I didn't even put payroll costs in there, often called labor burden. Workers' comp tends to be part of labor burden, but I didn't put the payroll taxes and all of that into this equation. That's immediately another 8% of the $14 an hour. So now you're billing him at $30 an hour. You're making $21.67, or excuse me, you're spending $21.67 on him. So your spread is, for every hour you work this guy, you're making $8.33. So that's how much extra money you're making. So if now you're out there doing all the work, you're still working 40 hours a week, and now you've got this guy working with you 40 hours a week, you were making 30 a man hour before, now you're making 38.33. So you were getting to take home, in my very elementary example, $30 a man hour, which was equating to about $48,000 a year. What's great is now you're also getting to take home another $8 a man hour because you've got a helper. Well, then you get another helper, and then the reality is that you've got to go sell enough time to keep this other guy busy. And so you don't now have time to work 40 hours a week. You're out there doing things to generate business. You're out doing estimates. You're working, answering billing questions on the phone. You're answering sales questions. You're selling. And the 40 hours a week that you used to work is now down to 30, down to 20, or better said, you're still working 40 hours a week, but now you're, in terms of billable time, but you're really putting in 70 hours a week, and you're worn out. You're working weekends. You're working nights. The business is starting to get really stressful and frustrating. And so the only answer is you've got to start working a little less, get off the truck for part of the week so that you can do all the other activities of the business and have your team now generate the billable revenue. So as you add more employees, all of these new things happen in the business that take all your time, so you can't be out there doing as much work. So let's say that you were to get out of the field or start to reduce your time in the field. If you want to continue to make $48,000 a year or make equivalent of $30 an hour, you now have to take these guys that you're selling their time at $8.33. You now need 3.6 of these guys. You need almost 4 guys to generate, because of the $8.33 that's left over, you need almost 4 guys out there in the field doing the work so that with the money left over, you can make the equivalent of $48,000 a year or 30 a man hour, which is what you were making before when you did all the work yourself. So basically what you've done is you've now got 4 guys doing the work for you. You're busy doing all the other stuff of the business, and you're not making any more money. And that tends to be the exact problem that most guys get into. Well, then something happens. Now you've got 4 guys, you're swamped, and you have nowhere to keep all your equipment, and then you're like, I'm so busy, I've got to go grow the company, because if I'm going to make $60,000 a year take home, and keep in mind in my example, there's no profit left over. You're not building any money in your bank to protect you for a rainy day. You're not putting any money aside to go buy new equipment. You're not doing any of the stuff you need to be doing. You're just surviving in this example. So now you sit down one night and you're like, how am I going to get myself out of this mess? I mean, how is this going to ever get better? I've got 4 employees, but nothing's better. And they break stuff and things happen, and that cuts into that $48,000 you were making, because it never goes as good as you think it will. So you're not always really making $833 per guy. Something's always happening. Now, you sit down and you think about it, and you say, okay, well, if I had 8 guys, if I just got 4 more guys, that would solve the problem. So that means you better get out there and hustle and sell and do everything it takes to grow the business. Well, pretty soon you're so busy again, you've hit a brick wall. And you're back in that same spot again. You're like, okay, now I'm up to 5 guys. I have no time. If you're married, your wife's worn out with you. If you've got kids, you're never seeing them, and you don't know what to do. So then you think, wait, if I got an office assistant, which you would be right, you should get an office assistant. But if I got an office assistant, that person could answer the phone. They could do a lot of the smaller activities that I'm doing, so I'd be freed up to go do the bigger stuff. So now you hire an office assistant. And let's just say that this office assistant on average costs you $1.50 per hour of time you sell per guy, hypothetically. And again, that's if you only have 4 guys, it's costing you a lot more than that. So very elementary example, but it's going to set up my point. And so, that's your office cost. I'm sorry, your office. Let's say your office cost you. You had to go you got an office assistant. Now you need an office. You need phones. You need all these other things. So you go get an office, and that equates to about $1 an hour for the time you sell across your guys. Now you need an office assistant. They're going to equate to about $2 an hour. For every hour of time you sell for a guy, so you're selling their time at $30, there's about $2 in cost in every hour you sell to help pay for that office assistant, that person in the office. And there's about $1 to help pay for the office expense. And then you've got utilities. Let's just say they equate to 50 cents. That's probably high. And so now notice what's happened down here. Your cost has gone up to $25 a man hour. And so now you have to have almost 5 guys to make the same $48,000 a year you were making. Now remember, I took my example a little further. We were up to like 6 guys. But you can see what happens to the cost here. And this is the trap that keeps happening. So you bump into another wall a little bit later and you say, now if I could just hire a fairly inexpensive estimator to run around and sell and estimate, meet with clients, spot check work, all that kind of stuff, and I'll hire this guy and he's going to cost me about $3 an hour. So for every hour of time we sell per guy, I need to budget in $3 in expense. So now look at where you're at. You now have an expense of $28.17 per man. So you're selling your guy's time at $30 an hour. It's now costing you $28.17 per guy. Your spread is now $1.83 per guy. If you want to make your same $48,000 a year you used to make, which equated to $30 a man hour, you now need almost 17 guys out there running around doing work for you, completely busy, billing 40 hours per man each week, just to make the $48,000 you were making before. So this is what happens so often. A guy starts out and he's making decent money. He wants to grow the company. And you look up 3 years later and you're thinking, I'm not making any more money than I was making before. Or maybe I'm making less or barely more, but I've got all these people and all these trucks and I've got all this stuff going on. But why is there no additional money for me? It's because you're still selling time at the same price you were selling it when it was just you. But now you have all of this expense you never had before. I didn't even put marketing expense. I mean, there is a whole list of expenses not covered here that I didn't account for. This, again, is a super elementary example. My numbers are all wrong. Some are higher, some are lower than what's been shown here. But you get the idea, and this is exactly what happens. Now look what happens if overnight you were to change your hourly rate that you sell time for to $40 a man hour. Now how many guys do you need? You just see, you're now making $11 an hour, almost $12 an hour. For every hour you sell of a guy's time, you're making almost $12 an hour. Now you only need about 3 guys. So let me just illustrate that one more time because this is a critical point. I need almost 17 guys when I was selling time at $30 an hour. If I sell my time at $40 an hour, I need barely 2 guys to make what I was making before. Now imagine that I actually still had the 17 guys, but now I'm making an $11.83 per man hour on my 17 guys. So let's do that math. Let's just do it this way. For every hour that ticks by in the day that you have 17 guys out in the field making you money, making you $11.83 an hour, you are accumulating $201 every hour that passes. So on a 40-hour week, you are accumulating $8,000 a week. Originally, you were making $48,000 a year. And we used the example of working 40 weeks a year. Now you're making $321,000 a year. Now, I would say that on a 17 guys, that's an exaggeration. With 17 workers, you're not going to make $321,000 a year in take-home pay and be growing the business and everything else that it takes. So my numbers are flawed, but can you see the difference in the problem? So originally, you kept your hourly rate at the same hourly rate as you were originally selling time for when it was just you, and you felt good, you were making money. Then as you grew the business and you acquired all of these additional expenses, you didn't constantly adjust your rate. And as a result, you kept adding people, but the business wasn't getting better. And in my example, we were still selling time at $30 a man hour, and it was taking something like 17 guys to generate the same income that you were making years back. By simply adjusting our rate that we sell time for, look at the dramatic difference it had. You would go from making $48,000 a year to $321,000 a year. This is the power of constantly adjusting your rates. Now, granted, you can only sell time for so much. You have to be competitive in your market. But the trap is that so many guys go out and they build a company and everything's going well. And so they keep adding more and more expenses to their business, but their rates aren't going up. They're either not becoming more efficient as a company or they're not adjusting the rate that they sell time for. And so their margins keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And the only way to solve the problem is to keep hiring more and more and more people and selling more and more. You can't sell your way out of this problem. You have to, at some point, fix your pricing. And so for those in commercial contracts or those in residential contracts, the only way to fix the problem is to either get rid of all the work that originally built their company or raise the pricing on all the work that originally built their company. And oftentimes, the contract that you have, they don't really respond well to you taking as big of a price increase as you need. If you 3 years later realize that, wow, I've been underpricing for 3 years and you have to go back and raise prices 30%, that immediately gets most of your clients to shop you, to immediately go out and look for better pricing because it's such a huge price increase. But oftentimes, that's the only way a guy can fix his business because he was so underpricing his work from day one. So this is maybe my final point, and that would be that if you're watching this and you're just getting started in business, or it's just you and a couple helpers, make sure that you're pricing your work today, right now in your business, at a price that will support your business as you have all of this additional cost. Now, with that being said, if you're pricing your work correctly today when it's just you and two helpers, so you're pricing at market rates or better, then you should be making a lot of money. Don't spend all that money. Be putting it into the bank to help fund the company, because if you get used to living on all of that money, so let's say you're out there with a couple workers and you're making $65,000 a year, and you're spending all of that $65,000 a year in your personal to support your personal lifestyle. Now when you want to grow the company, as you grow through the phases of your business and you start to hire people and start to add costs, you go through these ups and downs in the business where some of that money that you are pocketing now is needed for the business, and you can't take quite as much out of the business because you've got to invest a bit in the business to hire some people, buy some equipment. And so your income, if you're always taking all the money out of the business, your income's going to constantly be going up and down. And so you're going to hire 3 more people, cost you more money, your income goes down. Now, as you sell enough work to fully keep those 3 guys busy, your income goes up. Then you got to hire 3 more guys, your income goes down. You got to buy an office, your income goes down. You got to buy another truck, income goes down. You sell a whole lot of work, hire some more people, keep them completely busy, your income goes up. My point there is that this is what happens. And so a lot of guys early on make a lot of money when they're pricing correctly, spend all that money, and this is the next trap. Because they were spending all the money and they bought a house and they bought a car or a cool truck or whatever, they've got kids, now they have no money left over. They have to continue to make that 65, 70 grand a year just to live personally. And so that's the next trap that happens, is they have no money to invest in the business, or they can't take a temporary pay cut to afford all the expenses of the business so they can get their business to the next level. And so those are a few things to watch out for that really hold companies back, especially companies trying to go from the early years to the next phase of their business. If you pay attention to these numbers from day one and you're aware of them, you will grow so much faster and your business will be so much better.